Hi, everyone. Welcome to the xAPI cohort. This is our second session. I hope you are here with high energy because we have high energy Megan Torres with us for the core elements of an xAPI pilot. I just want to take you through some of the things. If you didn't join us on the first one, we have weekly web sessions. That is one of these here. We have an ongoing community in Slack, and I'm going to take you through some things there. And we have xAPI projects, which are going to be the culmination of this cohort. We have 2 weeks of demo projects put on by you. So we're hoping that you're going to join us when we do offer a lot of on-demand resources to get your API hat up. And as I said, we have the ongoing community in Slack. So you should have received in your email welcoming you to the cohort that Slack link. If you didn't, just email me, K Gleason at Learning Guild. I'm just going to drop that in chat just in case that you didn't receive it, and I'll make sure you'll get a link to the Slack channel because a lot of what we do here in Cohort happens in Slack. So that is very true. So we have a number of channels in the Slack workspace. One of the channels is main. That's where most everything is going to be there. That's the primary channel. You're going to have all kinds of cohort-wide messages in main. We have a social channel. It's a water cooler. Feel free to say hi and connect with other people. We have resources and recordings. That's where you're going to see people put in resources and recordings, but we also have recordings within the AirMeet platform, and I'll take you through that in just a minute. Here's where it gets really great. Hashtag team. That's how you're going to begin your conversations for your projects or what you want to work on. As you can see, we got a screenshot up there for xAPI and Cornerstone, Enterprise, and Storyline. There's all kinds of ones there. And then just discussions. Hashtag discuss whatever you want to discuss. We have a beginner's discussion. I'm involved in that because I'm beginning xAPI. I'm not a real xAPI guru. I'm learning it as well. And so I'm in that discussion and I'd love to hear from you. Our ongoing community. Now, in Slack, you can create your own channels. You can browse the channels and you can create them. If you want to start a team for a project, start hashtag team and then whatever you want. And if you want to start a discussion, hashtag discuss on whatever you want. But remember, when you start that team up or that discussion up, post that hashtag in the main channel so that people know, hey, there's a new particular thing going on that I want to be a part of. xAPI projects, we have just said, they're driven by you, by your interest. It can be a team, could be an individual. It's up to you. And it's really up to you how you form them. They're organic. So you create the channel. So this is how you do it in Slack. You're going to put in there team followed by a label. You'll create it. And you should enter a description as well. Now, you want to get in your teams. Like, do I have to do a Google Zoom, a Meet, whatever? No, no, no. Everything you can do is in here in AirMeet. We've got these tables in the lounge. They are available 24/7. And I know a number of you are outside of the North American time zone and you're working through the recordings. If you meet up with other people in your time zone, you can have a meeting at what might be, 4 o'clock in the morning, New York time, but whatever it is for you, they're available 24/7. Just log into the platform, move over to Lounge, and join a table. In the platform, you can also watch recordings. You go and log into the platform, you go to view schedule, you go to the particular day you want to see. This one is actually the Thursday, the first session, and you can watch the replay. Please note these are raw recordings, so there may be a little hiccups here and there, but generally speaking, we're pretty good about being good recordings. But you might want to fast forward through things in the beginning if you're already on board with how we do things. In the on-demand resources, you're going to go to xapicohort.com. And that's where we have previous cohort recordings. We have a link to the YouTube page, and it's a great place to go and find out what we've done in the past and get more information. We also send out a weekly email where we may drop some xAPI resources within the email. As you can see, like we did this What's in it for me, getting stakeholder buy-in article, I think it is, or is it a recording? Oh, it's a recording. Okay, now here we go with the stuff for the guild. So we have xAPI research. This research is done by none other than our own, well, I shouldn't say our own, but Megan Torrance, who's with us today. I'm dropping a link in chat. That research report is available to guild members for free. So make sure you are a member. We have Learning Solutions coming up, and that is in April. And you have, oh, I guess, yeah, I guess there was an opportunity to have a discount, but I guess that has passed, unfortunately. But in order to go to Learning Solution, oh,
Oh,
no,
wait,
there
if
is.
I could interrupt, this is
Yeah,
important. That
go.
discount doesn't end till March 3rd.
Thank you, Megan. I just saw that as I was highlighting, cutting and pasting that thing. $100. You're going to save that in a couple more weeks. So that's really great. And Megan Torres's xAPI, getting started with xAPI for learning analytics, and your BYOD, no code xAPI with Jeff Batt. And my slides have stopped for some reason. There we go. So become a member of the guild, and you do that for free. You go to the sign up for free, and we have all kinds of memberships. And not all kinds of memberships, I'm sorry. We have all kinds of resources that will get your ID, and I can't talk and cut and paste at the same time. I apologize, everybody. Here it is. I'm trying to grab the wrong thing, and I don't want to post the wrong thing in chat. So there you go. There's the join button. There's all kinds of things. You can see it on the screen. Okay, so there will be a table in the lounge. I'll be at it if you want to ask any questions about the cohort. Also, xAPI cohort at learningguild.com. Here we are, top, and I've wasted a lot of time. Sorry about that, but I wanted to make sure I didn't waste it. I want to make sure you're all getting the most out of cohort. Here we go with Megan Torrance of Torrance Learning. I'm going to turn things over to her, and I'll be off in the distance here, but I'll be available if you need me.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Karen, and thank you so much to the Learning Guild for hosting xAPI Cohort. This is a fantastic opportunity to learn and share, and we're going to talk about how to get in and hands-on learning today, and why you would do that, both in the cohort as well as in your work. Hey, Karen, if you could do me a favor and stop your share, that would enable me to share my screen. Thank you so much. But as we go, what I would love to see in the chat is a conversation with you and the kinds of things that you all are doing for your own pilots, because many of you have already started this journey and you are inspiration to other people. So that's the beautiful part about cohort is this community, right? People working together to learn together. And quite honestly, somebody asked me the other day at a conference, like, how did you get into xAPI and why did you do this? And I'll tell you what was really, really fascinating when I first got into xAPI was the coming together of people and vendors and organizations, and including ones that would otherwise compete with each other, to open up and share and learn together and explore together and develop this thing together. Because if we're working on this together, it has more utility for more people and gets more traction, right? And instead of this competitive dog eat dog, winner take all kind of environment that business can sometimes be, what this was an abundance mentality where we're looking at creating a bigger pie for everyone. And that was exhilarating to me. So I love all of the hellos and the connections. I know in the early days of xAPI Cohort, sometimes we would actually have physical meetups. And so I went to Washington, D.C. For something or other. And I don't even remember why, but I tossed out in the cohort, hey, everybody, I'm going to be in town. Does anybody want to get together? And that was a fantastic way to meet people. Renee Johnson is looking for a group. She's looking for a group that's doing Articulate 360 work and course development within Blackboard as an environment. And Renee, my suggestion is you start a team, and we'll talk about this. We'll talk about this. Last week we had lots of Cornerstone users. Docebo's doing some interesting things. So Gracie, absolutely, I would say spike a team, create a team. Oh, there you go. Now you're collecting your people here. This is why we do this. So let's take a look at where we're going today, and look at what the pieces and the parts and the why and the strategy behind pilot projects, and how they can apply to your work here. I love all the conversation going on in the chat. And so what I was looking at for, image for my cover for this session, right? I was thinking, oh, Elementor xAPI pilot. I just flew to New Orleans this week and back. And I was thinking, oh, I was going to get a pilot. And, every time I looked on the stock art sites, what I found for pilots were highly trained professionals wearing uniforms, no less, in front of a dashboard that just freaks me out, right? All these gears and dials and switches and things, right? And that seemed really, really daunting and not the metaphor I wanted to think of as a pilot. So then I happened to, because Adobe Stock kept suggesting ways for me to move forward, what I found was this image. And I thought, you know what? This is a great image as we think about moving forward. How do we launch? How do we take off? Right. So we're going to go there. And those of you who know me know that I can take a metaphor and run with it over and over and over again. So that's what we're going to do today. Those of you who don't know me, I should do some introduction. My name is Megan Torrance. Please reach out to me in email if I can be of any help to you. Because one of the things that we do at Torrance Learning is really focus on how can we help lift our industry, right? Get this? There's lift under these wings, right? But how do we lift our industry, all of us, so that we can be doing better, right? So we tend to share at Torrance Learning our secret sauce with people. And how to do xAPI is one of those things. And how to do agile project management is one of those things. And that's the llama here. And how to think about racial equity in an L&D context. That's the crew here and all these things. So this is what we do. Actually, I have our next book is coming out in pre-read or pre-order right now. You can pre-order it. But really helping our industry start using all of the data that we're going to start collecting here with xAPI. So my question for you to answer in the chat, and I do this intentionally because then you can see, I don't do this as a poll, I do this in chat so you can see who's doing it. So here's your instructions. Where are you on your xAPI journey? Put in the numbers in one line. Don't put one number per line. All of the numbers. Come on, folks, you're not following the directions. Just kidding. All right. If you have done multiple of these, put in one line. I have, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right. So not just one on a line, unless you only have one. Right. There we go. I'm seeing them, right? So 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There we go. There we go. Okay. Fantastic. It's lots and lots of traction here. Okay. So what I encourage you to do is to go through and look at how you're getting, right, where you are, and then scroll up the chat sometime and look at who else is in your same spot. Right, and those are your learning peers, right? There's your cohort within the cohort. Right? And so as we start looking at this community, right, what I love is that cohort is absolutely for beginners and absolutely for people who are looking to experiment and play and learn and share their knowledge with others, right? So you've absolutely got people who've done, right, 3, 4, 5, right, sending data already, receiving data already, using data and making decisions already. So I absolutely love that. And this is a question I tend to ask folks a lot because it helps them level set. But here's the thing, right? We're looking at this nice shiny jet, right? It's got 4 engines. It's incredibly powerful. It weighs tons and tons, and you can stuff hundreds of people inside, right? But we didn't start, right? Aviation didn't start with a jumbo jet like this. The first powered flight of a heavier than air aircraft, right, was the Wright Brothers in 1903, right? Their first flight lasted 12 seconds. They only went 120 feet. Their top speed, 6.8 miles per hour. I could almost, for a very short distance, well, for 12 feet, almost run faster than it. That's a pilot. Okay? That's a pilot project. And think about what they learned there. One of the things they learned there at Kitty Hawk was that they no longer needed the dunes and the wind gusts coming off the ocean, right? They figured out how to no longer need to go to North Carolina to do that, so they could come back to Ohio, Lisa, and they could be doing their test flights from home. Right? They learned all sorts of things after tons of trial and error and working with the formulas and the insights and the efforts of somebody else's learning, right? And somebody else's project progress. A bunch of people trying this out. They managed to get it to go, and then they shared what they had with others, right? So this is the spirit with which I want to talk about pilots today and how we can use pilots to get ahead, right? So we see a set of and a progression, right, of projects as an organization adopts xAPI and learning analytics, right? And so if you're here at Cohort, most folks are over in the pilot and the prototype stage. Notice I have switched from aircraft to spacecraft. Bear with me there, not totally consistent on my metaphors, right? But you're probably in this prototype and pilot stage, right? And we'll talk about what I mean and what I see as the differences. It's a little bit arbitrary, but as the differences between a prototype and a pilot, and why and how we might get things out of them that are different as we go, right? But what we're also looking at, right, this is while you're in prototype and pilot stage, right? This is your opportunity to learn about xAPI, to learn about your organization's learning ecosystem, which includes people, okay? And right, you're not only learning and doing, but you're also at the same time getting buy-in to do something more, right? To do the next step in this phased model, right? And you're maybe even at the same time in these early projects actually teaching somebody something, right? Actually accomplishing some sort of learner-focused instructional purpose, but also maybe not. Right? And that's an A-OK place to be. Once we get into those first production projects, then you actually are trying to teach somebody something, right? And so what we're going to be looking at today is, as I move, right, from prototype through pilot, production projects, multiple projects, and full scale operation. And I say this as though it's a smooth line, and it's not, right? Organizations of any medium to large scale will often be in multiple places, in multiple divisions and departments and teams all at the same time. And so the further to the right you go, or somebody is within the organization, the more you'll need to manage multiple phases of that adoption just within the organization. But all along the way, right, we have a look at strategy and purpose, our people and our skill set. What tools and systems and data supplies are we looking at? How much statistics and data are we actually analyzing? And then what kinds of relationships we need in order to make all this work. And this is going to be where we're going to spend some time today, right? Generally in cohort, we're looking at prototype projects, not always. Generally in cohort, we're looking at prototype projects done by people like you who are squeezing this in between your regular work responsibilities. It may be after hours. It may be generally people are using free, cheap projects or products, including some of the free trial and extended trial tools that are made available if you go into the cohort channel. Somebody help me out with the actual, it's like LMS, or it's not LMS, it's vendor offers and demos. If somebody could do me a favor and in the chat post the actual name of the Slack channel that has all of the good free trial stuff from the various vendors, that would be fantastic. Okay. And when I say skunkworks, that's an old-fashioned term for things done on the side, sometimes without permission or knowledge. And thanks, Becky and Doug, and Karen. And they're projects that fly underneath the radar. We don't necessarily need to ask permission for them. We're doing things small enough that if they break, nothing bad happens, right? And that's okay, right? It's okay if things break. We actually learn things about that, right? And so often when we're in that prototype phase, our purpose, the actual purpose, is just to try it and to do it. And like Sherry just said in the chat, right? Just play around, right? See what's there, see what's possible. Find the boundaries of your skill set. And often I've been there myself. I'm not doing analytics on the data. I am literally just saying it's alive. We have it. We made data happen and we can see it. And that is a powerful moment. Actually, we have a screenshot of one of our clients after we had set up his LRS and connected a data source to it, and he went, yes, we have it. And it was so great to see that exuberant moment, and you will have that as well. And so these prototype projects are pretty awesome and exhilarating, and they're going to get you hooked. They're going to get you hooked, I promise. Pilot projects have a little bit more formality to them. We may actually be collecting enough data to show somebody something. It may not be the full thing that we want, right? But it's enough to show them something. And I like to use the line, well, if I can do this with the data in this limited environment, imagine what I could do if I had tools that we actually invested in paying for and a team to work on it and had access to more data, right? So you're looking there for that hook. You're using what you're doing to get buy-in for more. You're building your own capability, right? You're probably possibly still on free or low cost tools. And what's really, really neat here is that because of the way xAPI works, you can pass data from one learning record store to another. So even if you are in a temporary learning record store right now, you may be able to move your data someplace else later on. So it's a low risk proposition, right? You may be more concerned on getting data and getting all the pieces hooked together than actually doing deep analysis, and that's okay. You may start at this point in your organization bringing in IT and starting to build those connections and those relationships. Pilot projects tend to still be what we call the plumbing, getting pieces hooked together to actually work. And because we're still working on the plumbing, having collaborators and partners actually really, really help. You know, Rita, your question is really fantastic, right? Do most companies want to invest in xAPI? If you frame it that way, my answer would be probably not. But you know what? Most companies want to invest in getting better data or better insights about what's happening in learning. That's the sell, right? That's the sell. I think to Joseph's point about most organizations don't have learning professionals who understand xAPI, I will tell you, by being here today and being in this cohort, you are still ahead of the curve in your industry because this is still an emerging space. So as you think about this, though, it doesn't take much to move ahead, which means folks are going to catch up pretty quickly, right? When we're looking at prototypes and pilots, that research report that Karen posted earlier, so if you scroll up in the chat, you can get the notes. In that research report, we asked people, what are you most likely to start using xAPI data with? Right? Where are you most likely to start? And you know where most people are going to start? With tools they already have. E-learning, video, and LMS data, right? E-learning, video, and LMS data. You know why? You don't have to buy anything, right? You don't have to buy anything. You don't have to do anything. You don't have to even learn a whole lot new. And you can do all of this generally with low or no code. So of course, this is a fantastic place to get started and exactly what you're going to want to do. And if you are interested in getting data out of instructor-led training or reinforcement and reminder tools, social and informal learning, I've got some examples coming up. Game-based learning, there's all sorts of other places, right, that you can gather data from and that people are. But if for those of you who are like, oh, well, I've got a storyline, you know what? You're along with 91.3% of the industry who says when they start using xAPI, they're going to start using with e-learning and storyline, right? Or Captivate or Domino, right? Which is going to get you better data. All sorts of options, right? So, and I think Mary's point here, right? We're just starting to use xAPI in e-learning because we're being asked to provide data other than scores and correct answers. Okay. Next level on that would be for you to be proposing to your business sponsors. Hi, you know what? Yeah, we can get you the scores and the correct answers like we've always had, but what if we could get you deeper analysis on what's going on in that course? What if we knew who was downloading and how many people bother to get the resources we make available in the course, right? That kind of information is useful and interesting to people, right? So here's the good news, though, right? The good news is that you already have authoring tools that do this stuff, right? This is why people are starting with e-learning. It's because your authoring tools already do this. Many of them do this in a low or no code fashion, right? So if I've got Domino or Pebble or even Lectora, right, out of the box, they're just going to send xAPI statements on everything, right? You don't have to do anything. It's just there, right? with a little bit of massaging and action, or maybe some custom JavaScript, you can get statements out of Articulate or Captivate. Smart Builder has a it's a smart builder. It's widgets. You don't have to know where the colons and brackets go, but you construct your own statements. We know folks using Inkling and Gomo and iSpring and Elucidat and all sorts of tools, right? Who are able to get, right, your tools today send xAPI data, right? Those of you who are looking at, right, so sending data, in a minute we're going to talk about receiving data, right, which is an entire thing altogether. So hold off on those LMS comments because we'll get there. But to some of the other comments in the chat, right, it's not just e-learning that can send data. That might be where you start, but you have all sorts of tools that are already supporting xAPI, some of which don't even consider themselves learning first tools, right? But it's just another data source and another data export for them. And so it ends up being something relatively easy. So there's lots and lots of work around how can I get content and information out of my learning experiences. Monique's question around getting statement or getting buy-in for xAPI. Duncan Welder last October did a xAPI cohort session from DevLearn on getting buy-in for xAPI. So I absolutely recommend Monique and anybody else who's interested, because you got 2 thumbs up there, go back into that session and check that out, because you may find some of the answers to people's questions there. Okay, so if we're fired up about doing a prototype, right, what are some of the things, or a pilot, right, what are some of the things you could do, right? So far, we've been talking about the right-hand side of this, right? What could you build it in? E-learning authoring, we've had a cohort project team in the past do an Alexa project. And so it was, it was all voice response and capturing how that learning experience went down. We've had people use the Zoom API and convert that data to xAPI and load that into our learning record store. So you get all of what happens in Zoom can be expressed as xAPI data. AirMeet would have the same kind of capability. We've had teams do Internet of Things sensors on robot cars, sensors on doors, sensors on, actually Matt Cleaver built it was an xAPI refrigerator. It was a mini refrigerator, and it had a sensor, kind of like a security door sensor, right, in your home security system. And it knew every time it opened, and every time it opened or closed, it would send an xAPI statement. But it also sent data that the sensor was picking up around things like what was the temperature. We knew what time it was. That kind of stuff was all captured in that statement. Super cool. That would be a great xAPI project. We've had folks use Twine and H5P and lots of video and Raspberry Pi, right? All sorts of stuff. So that's the what we build it in, but that's not the only component of an excellent prototype or product pilot, because you actually need the learning experience side of it, right? And so are you looking at new hire onboarding or coaching? We had one project that they built an app around the kinds of things that a preschool educator would be doing during the day. Right? And made an app by which the preschool educators could track what they were doing, store that data as xAPI statements, and generate custom reports per child. At the end of the day, you could say, this is what this kid did today, right? Pretty cool. That Alexa app was around practicing customer service skills. Okay? The Zoom, right? The Zoom project was around what happens when a team gives a presentation. Right? We've had video and e-learning projects that were really focused around cooking and recipes, including drink recipes. There was an entire, I think it was a 2-semester video project in which the learning content we were evaluating in the project was around cocktail recipes, right? Sales skills, all sorts of things. So as you think about what a pilot or a prototype is, think about what the learning experience that would create that data in that tool would be, because you need both sides. And it's actually going to give a hint here in that you not only need both sides, right, but you need both skill sets. But hold on to that thought, right? Hold on to that thought. So we're doing our pilots and we're doing our prototypes. We've got brilliant ideas. Actually, the xAPI Gnome, right, your friend on Twitter and the mascot for the xAPI cohort, the Gnome was a cohort project. It was new hire onboarding. Finbert the Gnome got a new job at a fish packing plant in Nome, Alaska. And as he went throughout his onboarding process, every single step of the way was a new and more challenging xAPI statement. So the first one was, he just pressed a button. Yes, I'm here. Boom. And the xAPI statement captured the fact that a button had been pressed. And then the next one was that a link had been clicked. And then we stored a rating about that link. And then you answered a question and got it correct or incorrect about the link. Each step of the way got more complex. Right? Each step of the way got more complex to the point where we were then using sensors, right? So there's a sensor inside of this fish, right? It's the Internet of Things sensor. And when the sensor was connected to the mobile phone that was running the onboarding experience, and you threw the fish, because remember, he works in a fish packing plant in Nome, Alaska. When you threw the fish fast enough to demonstrate that you had practiced this well enough, it generated an xAPI statement. Right? So that kind of project, right? We have a story and a theme and something to do and a set of technology to work with. Okay? So as you're building your projects, a word of caution, right? Several words of caution, actually. A whole slide full of caution. Right? So first you need to manage your expectations with others, right? This is a pilot project. It is going to be band-aided together. That Gnome project was absolutely, it was brilliant and totally band-aided together and was not robust enough to actually be deployed to anybody. Right? In fact, that fish, the accelerometer inside of the fish was incredibly finicky. Right? So manage your expectations with others. Among those expectations are just knowing that you may need to throw out the data. It's entirely possible that the data you generate, you're going to learn so much about what you actually wanted to generate and how you actually should have generated it that you just decide to throw it out. And that's okay too, but don't go into it with, a pilot project is not like the core certification that allows your employees to do their job without which they're not allowed to set foot on the floor. That's not a good pilot project necessarily. Right? If you do have real data about real people, you have to be careful with it. Right? We have privacy situations. We have all sorts of, depending on your country or your state, there are all sorts of regulations. I would just recommend that you are very, very careful about real data with real people. That might indicate that you're ready to start buying, instead of free trial software, buying software so that you have that extra layer of security. Right? And if you do have people who are pilot testers and they do engage in some sort of learning experience in which you then later on throw out the data, right? Or you update the learning experience based on what you learned in the pilot, at that point, you'll need to handle, what do I do with someone who successfully passed in the pilot situation and then we change the learning experience, and do they have to repass? Do they get some sort of partial credit? Are they considered waived out of the official one because they've already completed it? Right? So just something to be thinking about in advance. So as you're pulling together your pilot, right, some things you will need, right? We just talked about you'll need an instructional challenge and a technical challenge. As you're pulling together your cohort team, I recommend you pull those two things together into a project brief. Right? Even if it's just a paragraph that describes what it is we're doing on this project, it helps you describe this project to others. You can put it in the description of your Slack channel for your team. And you can also put it out on the main channel to say, hey, everybody, here's what we're doing. Right? We're going to use twine to mimic a real estate negotiation process to teach negotiation skills using the Veracity LRS or the Watershed, whatever LRS, right? Or Storm Cloud, right? And so pull that together, and then people think, oh, I can see that. That will help recruit them to it. Define what your minimum viable product at the end of cohort would be. So that Zoom project decided that their minimum viable product was to capture data on about 5 events. Not all of the events in Zoom, just 5 of the events in Zoom. And that's what they did. Then once they get that, if they've got more time, they can always add to it, right? And that's where your wish list comes in. And then you'll want some nuts and bolts, some operational pieces. Set yourself up that Slack channel like Karen showed you at the beginning of this hour. Set up some sort of meeting space and time, and you're more than welcome to use the cohort lounge in order to get together. You can do all sorts of things there. And then I recommend that you have both accountability. If you say something, you're going to do something for your team, actually go ahead and do it, but also some flexibility and cut each other some slack, right? I love what Becky Goldberg is just saying, right? Really, there are no barriers to participating on a team other than not joining, right? You are your own barrier, right? The world is your oyster, and the for 8 years now, xAPI Learning Cohort, and all the people participating in it have really been around how do we set up and support an environment in which anybody can walk in the door and learn something and participate. As you're pulling together your teams, you'll want some folks who do instructional design or learning experience design, right? They're the people who are going to design that onboarding program for your gnome. They're the people who are going to design and produce the videos for your cocktail recipe that you're then going to track the learning experience with xAPI with. You're also going to need some people who are technical enough to handle the environment that you're setting up, right? So if you want to do something in twine, you'll need someone who either knows or is willing to know about twine. If you're looking at something in custom code, you'll need to have people on your team who know something about or are willing to learn something about custom code. If you're building a project in Storyline, you'll want to have folks who know how to or are willing to learn how to use Storyline, right? And I recommend maybe not a full-on project manager, but someone who can help organize and kind of keep all the ducks moving in the general direction, right? I also think that it helps to have a team that has some storytelling and curiosity and like everybody has a learning and growth mindset, and someone who is involved with hype, who is going to report out, here's what we're doing. Hey, everybody, come take a look. And I want you to be thinking about presenting your projects at the end of cohort. In the last 2 weeks, there are opportunities to present your projects within cohort. Just a 10-minute, doesn't have to be finished. Nothing has to, honestly, realistically, in 12 weeks, you're not going to finish much, right? That's okay. It doesn't have to be a finished product. It's a pilot or a prototype. Okay? As you move forward, right, you then have for your first production projects that may look like pilots, just with better and cleaner data. At that point, you're going to start getting some sort of way of tracking your data with your LRSs. We've talked about some folks have talked about their different LMSs. Some of them are going to be better at xAPI than others. And some of you are going to go direct to an LRS, right? And work there. And so that makes perfect sense too, right? Use the tools that you have. If most of you who have an LMS have a corporate LMS, in which it would be inappropriate to invite teammates from outside of your company to do a pilot project inside of your company's LMS. Just saying. We then get into multiple projects and full-scale operation, and how you go about doing that, right, is kind of beyond the pilot and project. Ritushri, what do you do if you don't have access to an LRS? There are free trial LRSs. You can go out, and between now and top of the hour, you can have set up an LRS free trial account very, very simply. The vendors make this very, very easy. Nothing at all prevents you from joining a future cohort. Amanda, many people will watch and observe. Go ahead, get in Slack and watch and observe their first cohort, and then jump into a project afterwards. You can Brian Duck and Becky Goldberg, you're both here. Matt Cleaver, how many cohorts have you signed up for? Go ahead and put that in the chat. And anybody else who's been here for a number of cohorts. Martin Koob, right? There's some people who do these cohorts over and over and over again. Miranda George. So by all means, go ahead and do that. This is something you can take a screenshot of, or catch it on the recording and take a screenshot and use this to take this back to your team. And I would like you to dive in, jump in, prepare for takeoff, right? Let's do this. Let's have some fun. As much as it's entirely possible, and lots of people do it, watch their first cohort. It's also, Tina Richardson and anybody else in her same spot, also perfectly acceptable, encouraged actually, to come on out and in your first cohort, jump in and do a project, right? So don't, I think as we said earlier in the chat, there's absolutely nothing stopping you from doing a project. So everybody, thank you very much for joining us here this week at xAPI Cohort. I cannot wait to see your teams out in Slack. Post them in the main so we know what's going on. Share a little description. Thank you so much. And I love the spirit and the vibe in this group, and getting people started, and all the help you're getting from experts even today in the chat. So thanks, everybody.
Thank you so much, Megan. I really appreciate that. I am going to go ahead and end our session. And when we have that, you'll be put in the reception area. I'll be at a table in the lounge in case you have any other questions or just want to ask some questions about xAPI Cohort. I know Megan's already booked, so we'll see her another time. So thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody. Thanks, Karen, for taking good care of us.